Many Brexiteers have been looking to Canada's relationship with the European Union, or some parts of it, as a model for what Brexit could look like. Under Canada's free trade deal, known as CETA, most imported goods aren't taxed. However, there are some additional customs checks on some goods. Canada doesn't contribute to the EU budget, and there is no freedom of movement of goods or people. Well, joining me now is Adam Taylor. He's a former advisor to the Canadian Trade Minister who was involved in setting up CETA and now is the president of Export Action Global. Welcome to you indeed. Now, got to ask first of all, this backstop problem. You got the answer?
I don't fully, but I can say at the end of the day, we have a hard border in many respects with the United States, but we've gradually over time tried to thin that border out so we can, keep our sovereignty on immigration and all those issues, but maintain a free flow of goods and services and people. And ultimately, I think that's a creative solution that you could be looking to.
And do you have a hard border with the European Union?
Well, we do in many respects. I mean, we have a lot of things are coming and going every day across the Atlantic. But yes, we maintain a border, and you need passports and you need all sorts of clearance forms to come into the country and bring goods into the country, in both countries, in both jurisdictions, I should say. So it's borders work. You just have to find the creative solutions to make sure they don't stifle the free flow of trade, goods, services, and people.
Now, you've just said something that I've been dying for someone to say, which is drawing an analogy between Canada's relationship with the United States, its neighbour and major trading partner, and obviously Britain's relationship with the European Union. I mean, those are the same. So, simple answer is, does, therefore, Canada's relationship with the EU, does that work for Britain, given that it's a much closer neighbour?
I think it does. I think there's a creative solution to be found on a lot of these issues. When you look at Canada and the United States, we don't have a customs union.
No, but you're looking at Canada and the United States. I'm saying when we talk about Canada plus, we're talking about CETA.
Right. No, absolutely.
And would a CETA arrangement work for us?
A CETA arrangement with the European Union, I think, could look a lot like it looks between Canada and the European Union. You could almost cut and paste a lot of the provisions and keep, you'd have to negotiate a lot of these customs issues through the free trade agreement, which is what Canada and the EU did. Yeah. We have a lot of customs facilitation, a lot of cooperation, but at the end of the day, the border is the border, and it's maintained.
And I mean, it's not tariff free, is it?
It's not fully tariff-free, but a lot of our tariffs, now that Canada and the EU, the deal's virtually in force across the board. 98% of tariffs have come off trade. The rest are going to come off over the next 7 or so years. So, we're going to eventually get to tariff-free trade between Canada and the European Union virtually on everything.
But as you cut tariffs, because you're both members of the World Trade Organization, you have to cut tariffs for everybody else, do you?
Yeah, in many respects you do. As soon as you start to cut tariffs, if you're a member of the WTO, then they fall for everybody. But at the end of the day, I mean, even WTO tariffs, the average WTO tariff's about 3%. So that's a nuisance tariff. That's not suffocating trade or virtually stifling it between any two WTO members.
And what's been the benefit for Canada of sealing this agreement, finally?
Well, the biggest benefit is tariff-free access to the EU market, one of the largest and most dynamic markets in the world. It's a lucrative market. Canadian exporters wanted to increase trade across the EU. A third of all of our trade in Europe is with the UK, so we need to expand our trade across continental Europe, and that's been the biggest benefit for our export sector.
That's what we're giving up by leaving the European Union. We already have tariff-free trade with that. Right?
Yeah, and that's why I think it's not going to be all that difficult to convince the rest of the European Union that they need to maintain access to the UK market as well. That's the thing that we've been saying is you negotiate from a position of strength when you're a strong player in the global economy, and the UK is that, and they should take the time to do these things and do them right.
What about the question of future relationships with trade? I mean, is there really room for the UK to reach a better trade deal than what it's got now with Canada?
I think there is. When in many respects we see a third of all of Canadian exports to Europe are to the UK alone. So in many respects, Canada needs the UK more than the UK needs Canada. So it's in Canada's best interest to try and negotiate a favorable arrangement with the UK, and the UK can use that to your advantage, frankly, when you start to negotiate with Canada.
Do you think we are entering a period now where trade blocs are eroding and we're looking more at bilateral nation-to-nation arrangements?
I think so. I think we've seen, especially with the Trump administration, becoming a very highly protectionist, looking to manage trade as opposed to making trade more free. We are looking at bilateral arrangements look to be, in the short term, the future of how the global economy continues to trade with each other.
And how does Canada view trade with Ireland and Northern Ireland? Do you see that as a separate entity?
When Canada looks at trading with the UK, it looks at it almost as a single market. So it becomes a little more difficult to figure out how you would.
Including Ireland, really?
Yes. And so if you start to slice and dice, it becomes very, very, very narrow in terms of what sectors are trading in certain areas. Certainly our agriculture interests are doing a lot of bilateral trade with parts of Ireland. So those would have to be areas to look at for sure.
And what do you make of the whole Brexit venture, which the British people majority voted for? What do you make of it?
I think, Canada has to trade with the world, and so we try to do what we have to do to ensure our continued prosperity. Canada needs tariff-free access to the UK, given how much of our exports come. So I think with or without Brexit, it's in Canada's interest to get free trade with the UK quickly.
What we haven't talked about is services. I mean, goods, obviously Canada, a major producer, agricultural producer, and producer of other things. UK, heavily dependent on services. What sort of arrangement do you think we need in future, both with the EU and with the rest of the world on services?
Well, services are the future of trade, and Canada is also trying to export its services to the world. The ultimate thing here is tariffs fall to zero, but you need all the non-tariff barriers and all the technical barriers to trade to continue to fall as well. And so that will be key for trade with the UK and Europe, and trade with the UK and the rest of the world, is to make sure that those critical non-tariff barriers fall as well.
And a sort of difficult final question, but does Britain pulling back from the European Union, does it make those old ties stronger, do you think, the ties of dominion and empire going back?
It certainly has the potential to actually re-engage some of those old long-standing ties, and especially when you look at the trade flows, our biggest market in Europe has always been the UK, and I think it's going to have to continue to be for the foreseeable future, and that's why Canada is going to be quickly a willing partner to do a free trade deal with the UK.
Adam Taylor, thank you very much indeed for joining us.
Thank you.